Hey everybody, we are on part 5 of Knowing God's Will. Now, as a reminder, if you've watched any of the previous parts of this series, we're not talking about, in terms of knowing God's will, we're not talking about how to know God's will. And in terms of like the recipe or the ingredients for making, let's say, the pizza. Instead, we're talking about the attributes of knowing God's will or God's will so that you can know it. Meaning, if I'm blindfolded and I pick up some food and it tastes like pizza, then because I know what pizza tastes like, I know it's pizza. Okay, that might sound really simple, but the point is when you're going from the promise along the process to the palace, right? From the promise to the palace is the process. When you're going along the process, you're going to have challenging times. You're going to have times when you doubt. You're going to have times when you're going to have to be able to stop and kind of taste the process and say, does this taste like what God's will is like? Because if it tastes like God's will, if it's got the attributes of God's will, then you can be encouraged and keep going, right? So we've already gone through the first 4 parts. Today is part 5. Today is when you let go, that's when breakthrough and clarity can happen. When you let go, that's when breakthrough and clarity can happen. So let's talk about this. Let's say that you started a new business and you invited your nephew or your niece to work with you. You started the business. You led the way. It's your idea. You're kind enough to invite your nephew or your niece, right? Let's say your nephew to come along with you. Then at some point, you got 2 product lines. One product line is incredibly successful. The other one is losing money. Your nephew comes to your office, says, hey, do you have a second to chat? You're like, sure, let's chat. Your nephew says, I'd like to split up the company and I'd like for you to give me the successful product line, the one that's making millions and millions of dollars. And I'd like for you to take the one that's losing money. How do you feel about that? You don't feel well. You don't feel good about that, right? That's not fair. That's not right. That makes no sense whatsoever. And yet, when Lot said that to Abraham, he was called Abram at the time, Abram responds by saying, hey, you know what? Let's not allow this conflict. This is in chapter 13, verse 8. Of Genesis. Let's not allow this conflict to come between us or our herdsmen. After all, we're close relatives. We're friends. The whole countryside is open to you. Take your choice of any section of the land you want, and we will separate. If you want the land to the left, I'll take the land of the right. If you prefer the land on the right, I'll go to the left. You know what? If you want the good product line, I'll take the bad product line. How is Abram able to do that? Now, we've already talked about what he's been through to build his faith because God has tested it and God has shown himself faithful. But what is powerful about doing that? I'll tell you what's powerful is down in verse 14. It says, after Lot had gone, so Lot needs to leave. That's spiritually powerful. After Lot left, right? Lot, where did he go, by the way? He went to the better product line. He went to the better land, right? He went into the direction that his human eyes showed him was the better thing instead of following what his heart would know would be the right thing to do, which is either keep the company together or give the better product line to the one that founded the company, right? But anyway, it says, after Lot had gone in verse 14 of chapter 13, the Lord said to Abram, look as far as you can see in every direction, north, south, east, and west. How many of you know that included Lot's land? How many of you know that included Lot's land? I am giving you all this land, as far as you can see, to you and your descendants as a permanent possession. And I will give you so many descendants that, like the dust of the earth, they cannot be counted. Go and walk through the land in every direction, for I am giving it to you. You know what? Abraham let it go, and literally 5 minutes later, God gave it back. Bam! Wow! Think about that. Abraham let it go, and literally 5 minutes later, God gave it back. This is no different than Genesis chapter 22. Go read that for yourself. Everybody's heard about that, right? Abraham takes his son Isaac up on the mountain to sacrifice him. He raises up that knife, and God says, and immediately, as soon as he raised up that knife, God says, stop, stop, stop. Don't do it. Don't do it. As soon as we let go, breakthrough happens. As soon as we let go, clarity happens. As soon as we let go and we stop saying, God, why does my neighbor have a 10-story building when I only have a 1-story building? Or God, why did you only build a 1-story foundation into the ground with my neighbor who doesn't even know you? And by the way, we talked about this yesterday. The foundation means the challenges and the hardships in our life where he's digging deep, right? But mine's a 40-story foundation in the ground. Man, you've been giving me so many challenges. I haven't had success yet. This is difficult. Why are you doing this? As soon as we stop saying why, that's when God's going to all of a sudden build that 100-story building. That's when God's all of a sudden going to bring that blessing. That's when God's all of a sudden going to bring that clarity and that breakthrough that we've been waiting on when we let it go. We just let it go like Abram did. So that's part number 5. The first 4 parts of this series of knowing God's will, of the attributes of God's will, was essentially, kind of saying, okay, these are characteristics. These things are going to happen. You're going to get weak, then you're going to get strong. He's going to do amazing things, etc. This 5th part is to say to you, all right, now you want to come into the fullness of his will. You want to come into the fullness of his process. If you want to step from the promise through the process to the palace, you want to step into the palace, you got to let go. And you'll know that you've let go. This last point, you'll know you've let go when there's total peace, when there's no bitterness, when there's no unforgiveness, when you've completely forgiven, when you're at peace, when you're not anxious, right? When you're at total rest, you totally let go. And then God is able to step in and say, now the foundation is complete. That is the test. The foundation is complete. I can build the 100-story building. All right. Thanks, guys. It's a great series. See you next week.